They found something inside Noah's Ark that no modern naval engineer was prepared to see or accept. It was not a myth, it was not a legend, it was a system so precise that it left naval experts in complete silence. What archaeologists and engineers have discovered completely challenges everything you thought you knew about this story. The truth is that the Ark was not just a boat. It was the most advanced survival machine in history. An extraordinarily advanced design that matches point by point with current naval engineering standards. But what disturbs scientists the most is not the measurements, but the question that those measurements inevitably generate. How could a man without engineering, without cranes, without any technology, build something that we still cannot explain today? Today, we are going to open that door and show you every hidden detail that remains concealed inside Noah's Ark. The waste system, water, food, ventilation, and animal strategy, absolutely everything revealed. What you will discover in the next few minutes will forever change your understanding of this extraordinary ancient story. God gave Noah completely exact measurements, 300 cubits long, 50 wide, and 30 high. An elbow is approximately equivalent to 45 centimeters, the exact distance from the elbow to the tip of the finger. Make the calculation. And the Ark was approximately 137 meters long and 23 meters wide. 3 complete decks, over 9,000 square meters of surface area, equivalent to 20 basketball courts. And Noah built all this without cranes, without power tools, with only 8 people in total in his entire family. He did it for a full 120 years, a period that most completely overlook when telling this story. But here is the question that stops almost everyone. How did it survive the global flood? A wooden vessel of that size in a global deluge with such violent waves should have broken in two. By pure physics and basic engineering, that ship shouldn't have survived even the first few hours. However, he survived 371 complete and consecutive days in the most extreme possible conditions. And this is where the first secret comes in, one that modern science itself ended up confirming without any intention. In 1993, naval architects from the renowned KRISO Institute in South Korea studied the Ark. They did it not for faith or religion, but exclusively as an exercise in pure and scientific engineering. What they found left them in silence. The exact ratio between the length and the width of the Ark is 6:1. That is exactly the same ratio that modern shipbuilders use today in ocean-going vessels. Not too long to break, not too wide to capsize, the perfect and ideal proportion for rough waters. The researchers concluded that the design was completely optimal, capable of withstanding waves of up to 30 meters. A design delivered thousands of years ago exactly matches the scientific standards we are still using today. But the outer structure is just the beginning, and the real secrets were happening inside the Ark. Before entering the internal systems, you need to understand the world that existed outside while Noah was building. The Book of Enoch describes a land that no longer resembled in any way the original world that God had created before. The Nephilim, giants born from the union between the fallen angels and human women, dominated all the earth. Creatures of superhuman stature that had corrupted all forms of life on earth, sowing absolute terror. The Book of Enoch precisely details that the Nephilim consumed everything the earth produced until it was exhausted. Then they began to devour animals and eventually turned their devastating violence against human beings themselves. The earth was so deeply corrupted that Genesis 6:5 says that every human thought was continuously evil. In that context of total chaos, Noah built for 120 years while the whole world around him was falling apart. Each blow of the axe was also a solemn warning, a call to repentance that absolutely no one heard. However, Noah did not build solely with ordinary knowledge, because the source of his understanding came from a higher level. The Book of Jubilees and ancient rabbinical traditions record that the angel Uriel revealed the secrets to Noah, an accuracy too advanced for an ordinary man, as if someone with supernatural knowledge were guiding every detail. Genesis 6:9 describes Noah as a man who walked with God, having direct access to the source of all knowledge. And that divine knowledge produced a vessel whose technical perfection we are still studying thousands of years later. Now, here is the exact point where most people completely abandon the story of the Ark. Millions of species on Earth, how do you fit them all into one boat without completely collapsing logic? The answer is simple. You don't do it, because that's not what the Bible says, and it never was from the beginning. Genesis 6:20 says that God commanded Noah to bring 2 of each kind, not of each species, but of each kind. Modern creationist biologists use the term baramin to refer to these original animal kinds from the flood. Dogs, wolves, foxes, and coyotes all descend from a single original type of canine that was on the Ark. Lions, tigers, leopards, cheetahs are all variations of a single original type of feline that entered the Ark. When you study the animal kingdom under this logic, the number of distinct types drops to approximately 6,800. Not millions, not hundreds of thousands, around 6,800 animals, a figure that the Ark's logistics managed. Many researchers also believe that God sent young animals, smaller versions of each type, to save space. A young elephant takes up much less space and consumes significantly less food than a fully grown adult specimen. When you analyze the real numbers, the Ark, with its 9,000 square meters, was nowhere near its total limit. Researchers estimate that less than half of the total space was used to house the animals on board. The rest of the space was allocated for food, water, supplies, and all the systems that kept life functioning. Feeding thousands of animals for over a whole year is one of the most complex logistical challenges possible. However, Noah resolved it with a technical elegance that modern engineers can only acknowledge in silence. Before the flood, he had 120 years to prepare, time that he used with detailed planning. Genesis 6:21 records that God specifically commanded him to gather all kinds of food and store it. Dry grains, hay, fruits, nuts, seeds, compact and durable sources stored in large containers. But here is the key that turns this enormous logistical challenge into a brilliantly automated system. Many researchers believe that the feeding was semi-automatic, using gravity-fed inclined containers. As the animals ate from the lower feeder, more food automatically slid down from the upper container. A slow and perfectly continuous supply without the need for human intervention at every moment of the feeding cycle. 8 people managing 6,800 animals sounds impossible until you truly understand the system. The system did most of the work, and the 8 humans only supervised what was already practically working on its own. And while the power system operated almost autonomously, the water system was equally ingenious. Genesis 7:11 tells us that the fountains of the great abyss were opened, and the windows of heaven were opened as well. It was neither gentle nor calm rain. It was a simultaneous explosion of water from below and above at the same time. That continuous rain for 40 days represented a completely unlimited source of fresh water over the Ark. Researchers believe that the Ark had collection channels along the roof that directed water inside. Large internal cisterns made of stone or clay, capable of storing tens of thousands of liters of fresh and clean water. From the cisterns, the water flowed through wooden or clay pipes to the compartments on all levels. Simple distribution, completely based on gravity, designs the system correctly, and the water reaches every level. The complete flood lasted 371 days, and the water system was built to withstand each one of them. But there is a chapter that no one mentions in conventional documentaries about the Ark, and it may be the most impressive. 6,800 animals producing waste every day, with no machines available, no pumps, no electricity at all. The solution is almost beautiful in its genius simplicity, with sloped floors in each animal compartment on all 3 levels. If the floor of each compartment had a slight slope, the waste would naturally flow towards a central channel. From those channels, they would drain by gravity through vertical pipes and exit directly from the sides of the Ark. No bombs, no mechanical systems, just gravity and good design. The same principle used in ancient sewers. The animals could also have been housed in pens with slatted floors that had small gaps in the surface. Those gaps allowed waste to fall directly through, keeping the living space perfectly clean. Clean animals are healthier and more resilient animals. This was not just sanitation, it was survival engineering. But there is one detail that almost all documentaries omit, and it may be the most impressive feature of the Ark. Think about what was inside 6,800 animals, 8 humans, and waste being produced constantly without stopping. Body heat rising from thousands of warm-blooded creatures, methane gas accumulating in all enclosed spaces. Without proper airflow, everyone would have died inside the Ark, not in weeks, not in days, but probably in hours. Genesis 6:16 gives us a precise detail that most readers completely overlook when reading the text. God told Noah to build a tsohar, a special opening, and to finish it a cubit from the top of the Ark. An opening of 45 centimeters running around the entire perimeter just below the ceiling of the vessel. This naturally creates the chimney effect, where the warm air from the animals at the lower levels rises on its own. It flows upward through the 3 complete levels and exits through the tsohar located at the top of the perimeter. As the hot air escapes outside, cooler and fresher air is drawn in from the lower sides of the Ark. The result is a completely continuous and self-regulating airflow system without any possible mechanical intervention. Fresh air entering from below, circulating through the 3 levels, and stale air constantly exiting from above. Modern architects call this the stacking effect, and it is integrated into global passive ventilation systems. It was designed within the Ark thousands of years before we even had a scientific, technical name to describe it. Now we need to talk about something that very few documentaries about the Ark explain with the depth it deserves. How was a wooden vessel waterproofed to withstand being completely submerged in water for over a year without sinking? Genesis 6:14 explicitly commands that the Ark be covered completely with pitch on the inside and also on the outside. The Hebrew term is kopher, natural pitch, the same material that the ancient Mesopotamians used in their boats. But kopher has a deep etymological connection with kaphar, a word that means atonement and covering of sin. A theological signature perfectly hidden in the building material to cover the wood and conceal sin at the same time. The hot wax applied penetrates deeply into the wood fibers, seals every crack, and hardens over time. Applied internally and externally, it created a completely waterproof double layer that no amount of water could compromise. And the wood itself still held another mystery that linguists and theologians passionately debate to this day. The Bible says that the ark was built with gopher wood, a Hebrew term that does not appear in any other biblical text. We do not know its exact meaning. Some identify it with the cypress, others with the cedar, or with the ancient laminate. Some naval engineers who studied the ark propose a construction of overlapping layers with alternating grains. Similar to modern plywood impregnated with hot bitumen, they created a flexible yet waterproof structure, able to bend under the waves without breaking and to absorb continuous impacts without yielding, designed for the impossible. And the ark's roof also had a specific hydraulic function that perfectly complemented the other systems. A gabled roof drained rainwater laterally, preventing the dangerous accumulation of weight. At the same time, that design protected the Tsoha from direct water entry and channeled the rain towards the systems. Each element of the design served multiple simultaneous functions, a clear sign of superior planning. Now, while all those systems functioned perfectly inside, outside the world was coming to its violent end. And the Nephilim, those giant creatures that had dominated the earth for entire generations, were still alive outside. The Hebrew Midrash and other ancient texts explicitly refer to what happened when the water began to rise continuously. Completely desperate giants approached the ark as the water level rose, trying to force their way in. Some ancient texts describe those creatures desperately clinging to the hull of the ark for entire days. Beings of completely superhuman strength attempting to open or destroy a door built to superior specifications. And here is the detail from Genesis that completely changes the perspective when you read it with this context in mind. Genesis 7:16 explicitly states that it was the Lord who closed the door behind Noah, not Noah himself. Why this very specific detail in the sacred text? Why did it need to clarify so precisely who closed it? Because a door closed only by human hands would not have been enough against the forces waiting outside. A completely supernatural seal on a physical structure that no external force could open from the other side. Behind that door, sealed by God himself, was all the life that would continue to exist after the greatest flood. Outside that sealed door was the end of a complete era, the end of a world that chose total corruption. And while the ark withstood that supernatural pressure from the outside, life inside continued with its systems. Now imagine in detail what it felt like to be inside during the 40 days of the heaviest rain in the biblical account. Genesis 7:11 describes the beginning of the flood as a violent rupture, not as rain, but as a total explosion. The sources of the great abyss opening forcefully from below, while the rain pounded violently from above as well. Inside the ark, the creaking and groaning of the massive wooden beams under the pressure of the incessant waves. Thousands of animals in complete darkness, and the constant sound of water running through all the drainage systems. 8 people moving between the levels with their oil lamps, following routines without being able to see anything from the outside. The human challenge was not only physical, it was profoundly psychological for each of the 8 survivors of the ark. Without any view of the outside, not knowing if it was day or night, surrounded by noise and darkness for 300 days. Noah and his family survived because they had structure, a clear routine, and an absolute purpose in each of those days. The daily rhythm of feeding and giving water provided each day with a framework that prevented falling completely into despair. The repetition kept the inner chaos at bay, and the sacred purpose kept them sane throughout the year. They knew they were the designated guardians of all future life, and that mission was their most powerful psychological anchor. 8 people and 6,800 animals came out completely alive on the other side of the greatest catastrophe. And the mystery does not end with the construction of the ark, nor with the total 371 days of the flood. Genesis 8:4 says that the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat in present-day eastern Turkey. Numerous expeditions to Mount Ararat have reported wooden structures buried in the ice at over 4,000 meters. In 2010, Chinese and Turkish researchers announced wooden structures dated to 4,800 years ago. The area is militarily restricted and largely inaccessible to researchers who want to verify it. The mystery remains completely open and unresolved, as if the story of the Ark has not yet finished even today. Now let's put together everything we've discovered together and see the complete picture of what the Ark of Noah really was. A helmet with a 6-to-1 ratio that perfectly and undisputedly matches the naval standards of the 21st century. A large-scale feeding system with gravity automation that did not require constant human intervention. A water collection and distribution system based on pure physics that operated for 371 days. A waste management system with ancient drainage principles to keep the vessel clean and safe. A ventilation system that modern architects still actively replicate in buildings around the civilized world. A double-layer waterproofing with hot bitumen that withstood over a year of complete immersion without cracks. A supernatural seal on the door that no external force, human or supernatural, could break from the other side. All of this was designed and built by 8 people with hand tools thousands of years before modern engineering. Sustained for over a year through a global catastrophe without any failures in its interconnected systems. At some point, the question stops being whether the Ark was real and becomes something much deeper and unsettling. The inevitable question becomes this: where did that knowledge come from that no civilization should have possessed? Noah was not an engineer. He was not an architect. He was not a naval designer. He was simply a man who walked with God in faith. And God gave him the complete blueprint, every exact dimension, every proportion, every material, and every integrated system. And that plan worked perfectly for over a year in the most extreme conditions the Earth has ever known. That is not the story of a fortunate man who built a ship at the right moment in human history. That is the story of a God who knows perfectly how the universe works, because he is the one who built it all. And that same God still speaks today. That same God still guides, and that same God still fulfills each of his promises. Because every time the rain stops, and you see that rainbow in the sky, he continues to faithfully keep the promise. The same promise that he solemnly made after the flood, the same one that he has kept for thousands of years without exception. But the design of the Ark was not the only variable that determined the survival of all those on board. The choice of materials, construction technique, and sealing were equally decisive for the outcome. Without the coffer applied correctly, no internal system would have worked because the Ark would have started to sink. Without the properly designed skylight, the accumulated methane would have turned the Ark into a lethal trap in a matter of hours. Without the properly designed sloped floors, diseases would have wiped out the animals before the first month. Each system depended on the other, and all depended on a master design that no man could have created alone. And yet, a man created it with hand tools in 120 years, and it worked perfectly for an entire year. This is what modern naval engineers cannot explain when they sit down to analyze the data from the Ark. It is not faith that stops them. It is mathematics. It is physics. It is pure engineering that leaves them speechless. Because numbers don't lie, and the numbers from Noah's Ark consistently point towards a higher intelligence. An intelligence that understood hydrodynamics, biology, the chemistry of asphalt, and the physics of airflow. An intelligence that calculated with absolute precision how many animals, how much food, and how much water would be needed. An intelligence that anticipated the superhuman pressure that would be exerted against the door and designed an eternal seal. That intelligence was not Noah's. It was that of the one who created the physical laws that Noah simply obeyed. And every time an engineer studies the Ark, they end up asking the same question that has remained unanswered for millennia. How did Noah know exactly what proportion to use, what material to choose, and what system to implement for everything to work? The most honest answer that science can give is this: we do not know with any purely human explanation. But the sacred texts do know it and say it clearly. God spoke, Noah listened, and the earth was preserved. That is the true mystery of the Ark. Not whether it existed, but that it existed exactly as it was revealed in the text. And if it existed exactly as it was revealed, then everything else that those texts reveal deserves to be taken seriously. Because a God capable of designing a vessel that surpasses modern engineering is also capable of much more. It is capable of guiding a life, revealing hidden truths, and keeping promises that transcend entire generations. And that is what makes this story not just history. It is also a window into something much deeper. A window that has been open for thousands of years, waiting for someone to peek in, with enough humility to see inside. What you find when you look out is not just a ship. It is the evidence of a God who acts in real history. And that same God who acted in the time of Noah continues to act in the time of every person who reads this account. The story of Noah's Ark did not end when the boat touched land on the mountains of Ararat millennia ago. It will end when each person who hears it decides what to do with the question that this story inevitably generates. Where did that knowledge come from? And if it came from where the text says it came from, what does that mean for you today? That is the most important question that no documentary about Noah's Ark has ever dared to ask you. Because every time the rain stops and you see that rainbow in the sky, he continues to faithfully keep the promise. The same promise that he solemnly made after the flood, the same one that he has kept without exception for millennia. The Ark of Noah is not just a story from the past. It is a code that humanity is still learning to decipher. A code written in wood, tar, mathematical proportions, and systems that challenge our current understanding. A code that states there was a time when God intervened directly in history with absolute precision. And if he intervened then with that precision, nothing prevents him from intervening in the same way in the present. That is the conclusion reached not only by theologians, but also by engineers who study the Ark without faith. Because when the data overwhelms you and the numbers point beyond the explainable, honesty demands that you acknowledge it. The Ark of Noah surpasses the explainable, and that is the most extraordinary fact that any documentarian can present to you. Not a story of blind faith, but a story of data, proportions, systems, and results that speak for themselves. And that same God who spoke through every measure of the ark continues to speak through every detail of creation. Subscribe if you want to continue exploring the mysteries that the oldest texts of humanity still hold for you. And yet, the ark remains there, buried in the ice, keeping silent about what happened that year. A silence that speaks louder than any argument, because that silence contains the complete answer. The answer lies in every proportion, in every system, in every material chosen by a God who does not improvise. A God who designed the universe with the same laws that he later used to design the vessel that would preserve it. The parallel between the cosmos's creation and the ark's construction is no coincidence. It reflects the same author's signature. It is the evidence that the same God who placed the stars in their place also placed each beam of the ark in its own. If this story has made you reflect on the mysteries that ancient texts still hold, subscribe now. There are hidden truths in the oldest texts of humanity that no one has been able to tell you so completely.